Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the team at HR at 8 p.m., I welcome you all to the 19th episode of ABCDE, where brain-enriching food is served at no extra cost, entirely at your convenience and at your own home. ABCDE stands for Academia, Business, Consulting, Development, and Entrepreneurship. These sessions in Season 1 and Season 2 have served us well during these COVID times, away from the media wars and TRP issues. All of this has been made possible by the team at HR at 8 p.m. and Indranil Banerjee, who have devoted their time and effort in organizing these sessions. The topic for today, the Code on Social Security 2020. It has been released on September 29th, just about 3 weeks back, and so it is fresh off the oven. Our expert speaker is Dr. Subir Bikash Mitra, Advisor Law from GAIL India Limited. Mr. Mitra will be introduced shortly by our moderator, Sheetal Gupta. Sheetal has over 15 years of diversified HR and training experience in sectors like IT and BFC, e-commerce, payment banking, and FMCG. She has done her postgraduate diploma in IR and HRM from NMIMS Mumbai. She's a go-getter, and an enthusiastic learner spirit led her to become a co-founder for a small organization called EJT, Easy Jobs and Training, in 2019. She's also head HR with Raj Kundra and Shilpa Shetty's firm, which is soon going to launch Jail Stream, a made in India app which serves 51 countries. Now she's part of SHRM and HRD group. Before I turn over the floor to Sheetal, I would like to inform you that this session is being recorded. In order to keep the background noise to a minimum, the mics have been put on mute, and the moderator will take up questions on your behalf. Please keep writing in the chat box. In case you want to ask the question yourself, please raise your hand and your mic will be unmuted. I'll be summing up after the Q&A round is over. Over to you, Sheetal, to conduct the session.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. So welcome back to the HR at 8 p.m. session. It gives me an immense pleasure to introduce our honorable guest, Dr. Subir Bikash Mitra ji, who will be enlightening us with the Code of Social Security 2020. So I introduce Dr. Bikash Mitra ji, Subir Bikash Mitra ji, an MBA, LLM, PhD in Strategic Human Resource Management, and also a PhD law in Alternative Dispute Resolution Mechanism. An author who has penned down numerous research papers, articles published in various reputed journals. A law advisor in GAIL India Limited, which is a Maharatna PSU, Honorable President, Federation of Indian Corporate Council, FICC affiliated with APCCA and ICW, having an overall experience of more than 37 years, former Executive Director, Law and HR in GAIL India Limited, which is a Maharatna PSU, and former Director, Non-Executive in fully owned subsidiary of GAIL. He is an ardent negotiator and an expert in strategizing and dealing with trade unions, collectives for long-term settlement, resolution of industrial disputes, and also exhibits strong leadership to lead the cross-functional teams for settlement of commercial disputes through conciliatory mechanism. Known for his pioneering in formulating several policies in the field of HR and legal, which are being followed by the industry for system-driven approach in resolution of many complex and commercial issues. An associate member of the governing body of the Indian Council of Arbitration under the aegis of FICCI, and also a chairman of Legal Standing Committee, comprising of the legal heads of CPSE for legal matters and a member of Steering Committee on RTI in scope, which is Standing Conference of Public Enterprises. Also currently a member of the Task Force for advising judicial reforms in the country. Conferred fellowship of NIPM, National Institute of Personal Management, and instrumental in obtaining Gold Trophy, Citation of Scope, Meritorious Awards for RTI from President of India, Last but not the least, he is also a key member of many progressive professional institutions like IMA, SHRM, ISTD, National HRD Network. One of the most sought after speakers in the areas of dispute resolution mechanism, labor laws compliance management, HR and HRD initiatives. Also a visiting faculty to many industry forum, B schools and law institutes, universities including IIMs, Institute of Chartered Accountants, VV Giri and LI. He has been featured twice in the top made in General Counsel Power List for India, published by Legal 500, which is a leading global legal directory for the year 2016 and 18. Also awarded ICCA's Excellence Award for the year 2019. Also featured a Trailblazers, a publication on country's finest in-house counsels compiled by ICCA. His interview was also published in Business World. So very warm welcome to you, Dr. Mitra ji. We are eagerly awaiting for your session. So over to you, sir, please.
Thanks, Madam Sheetal, for such a long introduction. Respected Mr. Atul Bhatnagar, my seniors, friends from HR and legal fraternity, business managers, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, let me express my sincere thanks to the organizing team and especially Mr. Rijit Majumdar and Mr. Indronil for giving me this platform to interact on a subject which is very close to my heart. To be very honest, that pandemic has taught us many lessons. And one of them that very quickly we can reach out to many people without much difficulty in one go, rather than organizing the physical conference or so. So webinar has become the order of life. But to be very frank and being a very hard-nosed practicing manager, I must admit and acknowledge that the COVID crisis is deepening further, and the fallouts are likely to impact very adversely the industry. Yes, the severity of the impact will depend upon the nature of industry, and therefore the workforce associated with those industries and their plight you can always think about. One thing we must acknowledge and admit that things are undergoing a transformational change, and this change is taking a very, very, accelerated pace, and therefore there is an imperative need to take cognizance of that changes that is taking place at the workplace, and once changes are taking place at work and workplace, there is no other option on the part of the workforce to align itself with the work and the workplace. We must understand that the old traditional, the most reliant model of brick and mortar model, that is no more working as it is, because there are many activities and services are being provided on a platform. We call it, gig kind of, workforce. They have come in place, and that has now been recognized even in the labor law reforms. So coming back to the subject, that HR at this crucial moment has to play a very, very meaningful and significant role. HR as a function is always being accused as reactive. And although the nomenclature of this function has undergone changes from welfare to personnel to HR and so on and so forth, for the purpose to assume the role of, we call it the proactive, the planning, so as to facilitate competitive edge for a crisis that is likely to occur. But it is truly a very transitional time because the COVID has taken a huge toll on the livelihoods of the workforce. And therefore, HR has to play a very, very emphatic role, because management representing the employers are under tremendous pressure. The mantra is to get more with less manpower. And therefore, the workforce has come under tremendous pressure with a tough target. And the targets are not realistic targets, not attainable targets. And therefore, so there is a need for upskilling and reskilling besides the multitasking. So qualitatively, they are required to be prepared, and HR has to work on the L&D space on this issue. The second part, we must understand that the management is now not looking for very long-term planning or something. They are looking for short-term delivery with a short-sighted goal, and they want to make it up. And therefore the HR has to be more emphatic on the plight of the workforce. Now, I just would like to say that, that during this COVID period itself, that labor reforms have taken place. All the 4 codes have now been passed by the parliament, got the assent of the President of India. And if you look at the reaction is definitely a mixed reaction, because the trade unions representing the workforce, for them, this has gone completely against the interest of the workforce. They feel that the workforce will be at the mercy of the capitalist, and the employers, without any checks and balances, have been enormously empowered to hire and fire people at free will. But when you look at the portions of the industry, the corporate Inc., because I'm also a part and parcel of the HR subcommittee of the the CII for the northern region, when we discuss, we feel that probably this is a great step taken by the government. Whether it is a big boost for generating employment or not, but definitely it is not a baby step. It's a baby taking a big step, because this would definitely provide much needed flexibility to the organization. They can hire the people as per their requirement. And at the same time, it will provide the much needed dignity, equity, and the social security to the workforce. I'll come to each one of them when we talk about. They talk that it is industry feels that it is the fixed term employment that has been now recognized, which was only limited to the apparel manufacturing sector. But point is, there are activities in the organization which are short term in nature. The project you undertake, that requires a manpower for a limited period. So now the organization is empowered to engage people on fixed term basis. It is not limited to the executive cadre. Even the government permitted now also to engage people even in the non-executive workmen cadre on fixed term employment basis. So therefore, but with a the caveat that in case the fixed term employment is being pursued, then they perform the similar nature of work, then they will have to be paid as the permanent worker. They enjoy that kind of pay and allowances. Secondly, they feel that probably this fixed term employment is likely, and very likely it will replace those unorganized laborers engaged by any organization on the pretext of contract labor, badli, trainees, in what name? And they are at the mercy of the middleman. Now the organization are not afraid of regularization of those workforce, so they can directly engage those workforce on fixed term employment basis. So in the process, they will have more equity, more dignity, and secondly, social security. Even the third party, that is the contractor, may not be extending all those social security benefits, but once they are engaged through the organization directly, definitely the social security benefits will be ensured by the organization itself. And there are many more issues. They have contended that even in the past, the private sector used to make different kind of allowances so as to make sure that the impact on social security benefit as minimum as possible. Now, with this amendment, that your allowances cannot go beyond 50% or 1/2 of your basic wages. The point the industry is contesting that this amendment is definitely likely to instill much needed confidence to the investors, and that will definitely in turn will generate employment. They are talking about ease of doing business that is directly linked with the foreign direct investment. Until unless you improve up your position in the list of ease of doing business, the foreign investors, they do not gain confidence. In fact, in the past, when there had been several the amendments that have taken place in the alternative dispute resolution mechanism system, I am talking about an Arbitration Act and the Commercial Courts Act, so on and so forth. The position of India in the list of ease of doing business gone up by 23 ranks. So it is quite obvious and very much expected that with this kind of the amendment, which according to the industry, it is definitely may not be a big ticket reform, but it will start rolling out and create a kind of mindset, sensitize the workforce for the betterment of the the congenial environment of the industry. Now, let me not get into the just on the preamble part of it. Let me speak directly onto the business part, because the Social Security Act. The point I was trying to make, when you look at the genesis, the origin of Social Security Act, you'll find that first Social Security Act was enacted by US way back in 1935, when Mr. Roosevelt was the president of US. And in fact, it came as a bill of economic security bill, but subsequently on the proposal given by Mr. Frank, or some, I don't recall the name, Mr. Frank, I believe, so that it became a Social Security Act the first time. But if you look at the history of India, the most of the labor legislations have come up post Second World War, or during that time, or pre-independence or post-independence, and particularly the most important social security legislation, we call it Employees Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provision Act, that came in 1952. But two legislations in particular was, they were available even during the pre-independence period as well. That point in time, it used to be known as Workmen Compensation Act, 1923, and there are many state maternity benefits act. Yeah, but then the Workmen Compensation got repealed and became the Employees Compensation Act, that to expand its coverage. from not limited to only to the, those who are covered under the Industrial Disputes Act. Now it is made available to irrespective of the status of the employee. And the, the Maternity Benefit Act, of course, later on got amended and became 1961 Act. The point I'm trying to make that everybody is sensitized the need for social security legislation. Why? Because, the social security legislation is something that in the event of contingency, the state or the society has to provide some kind of guarantee or the, the income or some kind of compensation in the event of such kind of, contingencies that may happen to any individual. And it is not limited to during the course of employment. It could be a case when somebody is not in employment for many reasons, post-employment or, attaining the age of superannuation or, the closure of the, institution, so on and so forth. So the individual is a social animal, and therefore he should have an access to the medical benefits. He should get some kind of compensation in the event of disability and some kind of guaranteed income during or post employment. So there are three kind of plank attached to the social security legislation. I'd not like to, because it is already 8:30, so I'd not like to talk about the labor legislation arose due to, there are, issues because there is an inherent conflict between the workforce and the management, because, because they want more and more benefits, and, this being treated as a cost to the primitive management, and they feel that, higher the cost, lower the, it is going to have the impact on the bottom line and the top line of the organization. So let me not, let me skip this slide because there are, I generally, divided the labor laws legislation into 5 heads. So now they have got it, compressed into 4 heads. So let us focus on only the social security legislation. Yes, these are the concern of the workforce, that the amendment that has taken place or the reforms that have taken place. They feel that it is going to create a very, very informal sector, and people would definitely not be a part of the formal sector obligations. So it will definitely take away much needed social security benefits. So therefore, it is now the responsibility on the part of the employer or the management to show the intent and should not indulge in the the malpractices. They should not make use of the various provisions of the the statutes that have come in place to the disadvantage of the workforce. There are now 4 labor codes, so now let's not talk about everything. Let's talk about the social security and welfare labor code. So, as usual, the objective was very simple to rationalize. Objective was very simple to simplify it, and there had been a plethora of labor legislations under and there had been cross corrections among the different forms of labor legislation. There are as many as 47 labor legislations, and now they have converted 44 into 4. So they wanted to have one formula for every code. For example, the wage definition was different at different, the statute. The same way, the employees were defined differently. Somebody is worker, somebody is workman, somebody employee, so on and so forth. So as to have uniformity, consistency, and non-discriminatory approach, they thought of, having the labor codes and because it was long overdue. Because I still remember during my student days when I was pursuing my MBA course, the people used to talk about the 1968 second report on labor, National Committee on Labor, and then 82 some kind of bills were brought in. Then there were tripartite committee 87, and then 2001 the third committee on the National Commission on Labor. But finally, it did not occur. It was long overdue. So so there is now responsibility both on the part of the workforce and also the management to to strike a balance and to make sure that it does not impact the industrial relation environment. My limited discussion today is on Employees Provident Fund Miscellaneous Provision Act 1952, ESI Act 1948, Maternity Benefit Act 1961, Payment of Gratuity Act 1972, Employees Compensation Act 1923. I would not like to get into the various provisions of the statute because that's not the purpose. I would like to only say that HR people have to be very, very sensitive to make sure that the benefits which are intended under those statutes are really passed on to the workforce. Making one position time and again very clear. They say that this amendment can be looked upon that they have tried to address the requirement of the unorganized labor of the organized sector. It is not meant for that the large number of unorganized labor in the unorganized sector, because in the organized sector even the large number, the population is very high. I tell you, even Gale, we have got a regular manpower of about 5,000 or so, but the less than 5,000 rather. But the total contract labor engaged for different activities, the peripheral and the project, and it is more than 20,000. So it is almost 4 times, and they are at the hands of the what you call it, the middleman, that is the contractor. But because of the high level of sensitivity and the HR makes sure over there that all the benefits are properly passed on. Even we do not limit ourselves to make payment of the workforce on the basis of the notified minimum wage. We pay them much higher, at least 30% higher than the minimum wage. So those are being ensured. So the point I'm trying to make, that there are PSUs, there are organizations, probably they are doing a much better role. They are, the HR is already sensitive, and they are doing their part for the benefits of the workforce. But definitely this kind of amendment will take away will provide much more benefits to the workforce if they are engaged, replacing the contract labor system as a fixed term employment system. I would not like to touch upon the Indian Constitution, because that happens to be the source of all labor laws. Because if you understand that the fundamental rights does not require to create any specific statute. But when you talk about the directive principles of the state policy, that definitely triggers on the part of the state to create specific legislation for its enforceability. So I would not like to touch on 38, 39, 41, 42, and 43, 48. But I must tell you that it happens to be the supreme law of the country. And it being a supreme law of the country, the Supreme Court of India is the protector and guardian of the supreme law, that the Indian Constitution. Although it empowers the legislators to make amendment under Article 358 of NOBAB, but with the limited options. You must have come across in 1976, Madam Gandhi had gone ahead in creating a mini constitution, gone ahead with many amendments during the emergency, the 42nd amendment. In fact, she had only brought out two, the specific words in the preamble itself, the socialistic and the secular. Although the fabric was socialistic and secular, but those two words were incorporated in. And she amended, even she had gone for amendment to the Article 13 and 358 so as to take away the judicial review. But point remains, finally, it was turned down, during the Bharatiya government, because no one is permitted to change the basic structure of the constitution. That happens to be the confidence, that happens to be the power that has been enshrined in our constitution for the citizens of the country. So let's not get into there. Yes, these are the 5 statutes we'll talk about. So I'll only talk about the objects of the act. Yes, people generally get confused that wage limit is 15,000, but no. If somebody is already a member of the provident fund, then even if the salary goes beyond 15,000, he's entitled to the provident fund benefits. When you look at the provident fund benefits, it generally got 3 benefits attached to it, associated to it. In fact, you look at the superannuation benefit when we talk about the social security legislation. It generally stands for provident fund, it stands for pension, it stands for gratuity. But when you look at the difference between the government employees and the industrial workers, you have come across that pension is a guaranteed pension for the government employees. It is not like that for the industrial worker. They have got the contributory provident fund. Of course, the government has also changed that philosophy now. Post 2004, who have joined the government sector, they do not get the assured benefit scheme. Now they are governed by the contributory pension scheme. So contribution is being made. Earlier it used to be the 12%, now it is 14%. But the industrial worker, they had been agitating for long for grant of pension, because when you look at the provident fund benefits, the most of the cases, they generally withdraw that pension as high as 75% of their pension on account of child's marriage or education or something like that. So when they superannuate, they do not have enough income to manage their livelihood. So they had been agitating for the pension. So way back in 1995, the employees pension scheme has come into place, EPS 95. And you must have come across plethora of cases, and the case has finally traveled up to the Supreme Court, that people are demanding for similar kind of pension as being enjoyed by the government employees. That is assured benefit scheme. The point remains that it is an assured benefit scheme, but the contribution which was taken is in a much lower proportion. Because when 1995 scheme came into being, it was decided that the 8.33% of the employer contribution up to a threshold limit of, the 5,000 would only be, contributed by the employees, which changed to, 6,500 in 2001 and 15,000 in 2014. So even if the employees serve for more than 35 years or so, he cannot become eligible for more than 7,500 towards pension. Of course, things are, before the court now, because those who have got the exemption, if you look at the 3 schemes, you have the provision for exemption. And most of the the industrial establishment, the large industrial establishment, they have got the exemption under EPF scheme and EDLI scheme. But they did not get the exemption under EPS 95 scheme. Only the two organizations I know, one is Oil India and the second is Tata Steel, they have got the exemption, so they have been given the benefits as per the judgments of the Karnataka High Court. But for the others, the matter is still pending before the court. Now, if you look at the EDLI scheme, the EDLI scheme is basically to meet the contingencies. In case you meet with an accident, then the benefit should be given to you. And the benefits ranging from 2.5 lakhs to 7 lakhs. And the organization, those who have got the exemption, they have prepared or formulated much better scheme, and that is linked with the insurance. So I'm not talking about when you look at the contribution 12% and 10%, this contribution, that is what, the private employers, what they used to do, they used to keep the basic pay as minimum as possible, so as to ensure that the outgo on the provident fund benefits should be as minimum as possible. Now with these amendments, now they cannot have allowances more than 1/2 of the basic pay. So similar the Employee State Insurance Act, this is a fantastic act providing plethora of host of benefits to the industrial workers. And earlier, what used to happen, there are industrial units where the ESI, the benefits are not available because there were no ESI establishment. Now with this amendment, each and every employee will get covered under the Employee State Insurance Act. In fact, we had been facing a lot of difficulties because the limit was only 21,000. The contract workers draw much higher than 21,000. So generally they used to go out of the coverage of the ESI Act. What we used to do? We used to limit their pay, basic pay, up to 21,000, and rest of the benefits we used to make payment through the quarterly or half yearly or annual basis, so as to make sure that they remain covered under the ESI Act and draw all such benefits. Because wherever the ESI Act is applicable, the employees, the Compensation Act is not applicable. But Employees Compensation Act is only to meet the contingencies on account of disability. It does not help in drawing the medical benefits. So there are issues. So therefore, each and every the outsourced employee intends to get covered under the ESI Act only. So there are n number of benefits. Let me not talk about them. The Employees Compensation Act, I mentioned about it. The Employees Compensation Act is also a great benefit to all the employees because they can get paid leave, they can get the compensation for temporary disablement or permanent disablement. So there are different formula attached to it. Earlier it was 8,000, now it has been enhanced to 15,000. Now, if an employee, say a worker of 18 years age, and he meets with an accident, fatal accident or permanent disability, he will get as high as 21 lakhs. So the amendment that have taken place, so they have also given much needed attention with regard to the compensation to the such kind of, the workforce as well. Gratuity Act, yes, it has now become 20 lakhs, as you all know. Earlier, it is the 15 days average salary for every completed year of service. And if you look at the formula, it talks about the last drawn salary multiplied by 15 by 26. The 15 days average salary is not 1/2 exactly, it is 15 by 26 and multiplied by number of years of qualifying period of service. Why I'm saying qualifying? Because one has to necessarily serve 240 days on year-on-year basis. So that is what now, with the introduction of the fixed term employment, the scheme has undergone a change. Earlier, one has to have at least 5 years of continuous service to become eligible for gratuity. Now, it's no more there for the different categories of employees. For the, the fixed term employment, even if they serve for 1 year, you'll have to provide the, gratuity. Even the contract workforce, when they work for us for 2 years or so, we provide them the gratuity. So that contribution goes to them on year-on-year basis, because we know that if the contractor gets changed and the contract workers, they do not continue, they will not be eligible for the payment of gratuity. So one has to think very seriously that, how do we propose to pass on certain benefits to the workforce? Believe me, during the pandemic, in fact, there used to be a huge issue with reference to the, the migrant labor. But it did not happen with the GIL, because we have ensured that whether they come on duty or not, they will be paid wages, because they have made themselves available. But we did not avail of their services. So we had to go to the board all the way to, get the approval that even if they have not been, employed, because many of our activities come under the essential categories. So they were engaged, where non-essential services, they made themselves available. We did not avail of their services, but we paid them the salary. So there was no incidence of, the employees to go away to their hometown or so. They stayed back, they made themselves available, and we have been paying them the salary. So point is, the HR has to play a very, very meaningful role, because the payment you make, that brings oneness, ownership, and the commitment on the part of the the workforce towards the organization. I do not have much to say, but there are many judgments which I don't intend to discuss here, because that requires a lot of deliberations. Let me not get into there. Rather, I would prefer to have question answer session, if any.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mitraji. That was definitely an enlightening session for all of us. So we have got a lot of good reviews about the session already. Like, it's a relevant and wonderful earning session from Mr. Prabal Vasu. We have certain question and answers here. I have a question from Rahul. He would want to know the highlights on the benefits which shall be extended in the coming labor code for the laborers of unorganized sector. So he would want to know about.
Yeah. Rahul, it's a very good question. In fact, I should have covered. Point remains that, that the legislations have come into place, but we are all waiting for the rules to be framed thereunder. Because rules are to be framed in a manner that the provisions of the statutes can become workable, implementable. If you recall, way back in 2017, Maternity Benefit Act got amended. And an unrealistic provision that came into being with reference to the case benefits. And it talked about that whether you have got one or no lady employee, you have to provide the case facility. But finally, it could not be implemented. So provisions are to be made workable, and therefore rules are very important. When the central government could not bring out any specific rules on that provision, they have empowered state governments to frame rules. And finally, only two governments, the Karnataka government and the Haryana government, they brought out rules. But even that could not be implemented by any of the PSUs, even those who are covered under Article 12 of the Constitution. Because you must remember that the rule does not, that the statute does not talk about that the OPEX, that the operational expenditure and the capital expenditure are to be borne by the employer. So there is a conflict. And if you permit a lady employee to visit the place 4 times a day, can you imagine when the whole industry is moving towards the cost to the employees format? Even the PSUs have moved cost to the company format. So therefore, for a particular employee, if you are required to create a creche facility costing around 70, 80 or 1 lakh rupees, will that be a workable solution? One thing we should not forget, whether we are in PSU, whether we are get covered under Article 12 or under Section 2H of the RTI Act, but at the end of the day, we are a commercial entity. Like any other private sector, the cornerstone is only and only to pursue the commercial interest, because we create balance sheet, unlike the government. In fact, our organization, little, what do we call it, pro-employee kind of organization, we have adopted childcare leave for 2 years with full pay. Unheard of in any of the PSUs or for that matter in private sector. We have just got it copied from the 6th pay commissions, the provisions. The point I'm trying to make, you have to strike a balance. Any provision you make, that has to serve both the organization and the workforce. So we are waiting for the rules to come up and then to talk about it.
Sir, I have a question, sir.
Right.
Since the other than the central government, the individual state government is supposed to make rule out of this 4 code. This is the standing procedure. Now there is a propensity to undone the central act by the otherwise ruled state governments. So how that kind of philosophy will impact the codes in the coming future?
It's a very good question, because basically if you look at the constitution, they did not cover it properly. In fact, if you go to the 7th schedule, there are 3 lists, and labor as a subject comes under the concurrent list. So both the state and the center, both are empowered, and the state, I think Article 254 or 58, are empowered to make any amendment or frame, the rules for the labor. The point is, there would be certain, issues with reference to creating the rules. That's why I'm saying, when people are giving the timeline that within a month or so, rules will come up and it is going to be implemented. But I'm still in doubt. Probably it requires another, the round of consultation, because the BMS, the Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh, they have already raised an issue. They said that the government of India is a signatory to the UN Convention, and under UN Convention, under Article 144, before you talk about any kind of labor laws reforms, you are required to have the tripartite consultations. But it has happened otherwise. In fact, in the finance bill itself, the late Mr. Arun Jaitley talked about the labor law reforms. So procedurally it was wrong. And thereafter, before the matter was placed before the parliament, so all those procedural issues have been taken care of. The point I'm trying to make, implementation is an art, so as to make sure that both sides are comfortable.
So we move on to the next question. Mahesh from Mumbai has raised a question. He's checking on, do you think the new code will have a better shade of implementation as all the laws currently are marred by a negligible implementation on the ground. Also, conflict today with the contractors who are not paying towards ESIC under the garb of Supreme Court say, is it possible that the retrospect liability may emerge as a principal employers? Your views, please, sir.
I did not get the question properly, but what I could make out that yes,
Okay,
for the
okay.
purpose of framing the rules, yes, it is important that hard-nosed practicing managers should only be involved because, at times we build castles in the air and one has to be, make sure that one has to be, make sure that at least rules are grounded and it is workable implementation of the, the benefits to be passed on to the workforce. Those are very important, But at the same time, as I mentioned earlier also, the responsibility on the part of the management not to take advantage of the various provisions of the statute to the disadvantage of the workforce. Debate is now on social security versus employment generation.
Dr. Mitra, first of all, thank you very much. It's been very enlightening. Your session has been very nice. And I'm actually amazed that somebody could be that passionate in a subject like this. I'm sure your depth speaks for itself. So I had a small question. The second one, of course, the first one you have fairly answered on 2-3 occasions. Second one is, we are regularly facing this challenge with contractors not paying the ESIC contribution by virtue of the Supreme Court stay, wherein it says that, you are not supposed to pay right now till the time the judgment is final. And in the interim, they also do not get the ESIC benefit in the hospitals. So my only question is, as a learned person in the subject, is there a possibility, God forbid, tomorrow the stay gets lifted and the judgment goes against, and is there a possibility of a retrospect liability on the principal employer front, because contractors keep changing, workers keep on changing and things like that. So that was
that's a very good question, Mr. Mahesh. In fact, I'm very happy that you have raised this question. Point is, you must look at the section 21 of the ESI Act that provides enormous power to the principal employer. In fact, if you look at the system being followed in GAIL, what we do, even in the bid evaluation criteria, we permit contractors to submit their bid provided they have got the PF code, they have got the ESI code. Until unless those are empowered or having those codes, they are not being permitted to be a part of our, the establishment. Because we always treat the contractors are nothing but an extended arm of the organization. Now, when they submit the bill, their bill can only be processed provided they attach the payment proof towards the wage sheet. They provide provide the documents in proof of ESI contribution and PF contribution. Suppose they don't give it, we don't process their bill for payment. And the second part is, whatever could be the judgment, point remains as on date, whatever is permissible and admissible to the workforce, that needs to be ensured, and that happens to be the responsibility and commitment of the principal employer. In case the contractors do not extend those benefits, then you have to invoke section 21. Even if they don't make the payment, then please invoke section 21(4) and make sure that you are at least in the compliance mode. Because compliance management suddenly has assumed a lot of importance now. Because in case your company, a particular company is listed with the stock exchange, so the SEBI rules are applicable on you. Earlier it was known as clause 49. Now it is known as the LODR. That is, there is LODR is the obligation, the legal obligation on the part of the organization for disclosure requirement. And not only that, that compliance certificate has to go up to the board level also. So the point I'm trying to make, that as a HR person, you must have enough, weapons with you, just to make sure that you are not in the non-compliance mode. In an organization like GAIL, we have created a specific software, and in case the contractor does not comply with, it gets escalated. And we even go for, taking punitive action like holidaying, banning, the blacklisting the contractor. And we don't limit ourselves. We get it circulated amongst the oil and gas PSUs so that he does not bag any other contract from any other oil and gas sector organization. And it remains in our website. The point I'm trying to make, you have to create internal mechanism. The law will not empower you with everything. It is the responsibility of the HR to create internal mechanism, checks and balances, so that the contractors do not just get away by not doing anything. And therefore, in our organization, we have now proposed that in case they are engaging the contract labor, they'll have to not only make sure that they'll have to make the payment, we are also here to provide you 8% additional service charge. So any bid below 8%, we don't accept them. So point I'm trying to make, that in case you are fair with the contractor, contractors will in turn be fairer with the workforce.
Sure, sir. I think that was very well answered. Thank you very much. I have one last quick question. See, while incidentally, we are in real estate and we follow the same principle that all payments from our billing department are actually routed through the compliance team before they go to finance and accounts for payment. Now, the second question which I had was the last question, is that many a time it so happens that the size of the project is big and we have a large contractor. So a contractor of the size and scale of someone like Larsen and Toubro is a contractor. Now they subsequently, they outsource a lot of that work further. Now our understanding most of the times in such cases that the liability of principal employer then gets transferred to our lead contractor, which is L&T in those cases. However, my question is that is there a possibility or a judgment or a background or a case in the past where the principal employer, the one who hired the lead contractor, had any challenge, number one? And number two, is it good enough for the subcontractors' documents of challans of PF, ESIC registration, etc. of the workers? Is it good enough for that to be taken care of? So we get that put in the contract itself.
Mr. Mahesh, the question you have raised, it is a frequently asked question, and when all organizations are confronted with such issues, because in any project, when your project is awarded to a very large organization on turnkey basis, it is obvious that the same contractors are likely to engage many subcontractors. So your tender document must have a provision to permitting the contractors to engage subcontractor with the knowledge and explicit permission of the principal employers. And then only you are eligible to inspect the documents of the contractor's establishment. If that is not there, then and no job can be assigned from the contractor to the subcontractor. Then the contractors will continue to remain responsible with your institution.
Sure, sir. Thanks.
So I hope, Mahesh, we've answered all your questions, right?
Yes, indeed. And I really enjoyed being on this session. Thank you very much. It was highly engaging.
Yeah, thank you so much. Rahul, you have a
Yeah,
question, I guess.
sir, madam, this is not a question, but sir, I'm really grateful and thanks to you that you are such an experienced person that whatever you are saying, we are also practicing the same thing in our organizations. So thank you for that, because the whatever you have said just now for compliance of ESIS and PF, we are also following the same thing. So what to say that your experience, you can see everything very clearly in practice. And we are really grateful to you for such a kind of conversation. Thank you,
Thank you.
sir.
I'm grateful.
Dr. Mitra, I have one single question, sir. It is your perspective, brother. Now we are having 4 codes long awaited. It was awaited for quite a few decades, in fact. Now, after promulgation of this as an act, uh, how do you see whether these are labor friendly, or these are employers friendly, or a balanced strike, and how it is going to impact the business as a whole?
Look, as I mentioned that, that, probably it is long overdue. In fact, in the laws which were enacted 50, 70 years ago, so there was an imperative need to revisit those laws because it has failed to bring confidence in the minds of the investors. That you need to acknowledge. You need to acknowledge that it was difficult for an organization to perform. An organization in a labor-intensive industry, because I have worked for more than 9 years, more than 8 years or so, I have seen that people used to remain busy with non-productive work because it is only and only the permanent workforce of the organized sector take advantage of the different statutes. But the people in the unorganized sector working for the organized sector are not enjoying any provisions of the statute. Probably, if it is implemented with the right kind of spirit, probably they would get their dues at the moment. I'm sure the trade unions are feeling most insecure today because look at the plight of the trade union leaders. Because I represent NIPM, ISTD, and National HTD Network, and we organize number of the workshops where we invite the trade union leaders. I find that they are now feeling suffocated because permanent workforce, those are, for example, in an organization like GAIL, a permanent workforce draws more than ₹1 lakh a salary. They get everything, a car loan to everything. So they are not concerned, no way concerned about the trade union. Because they feel that if they come to know that such benefits are being enjoyed by them, they will ask for more and more contribution on the pretext of the society, so on and so forth. But the trade unions could not grab the larger outsourced workforce, that is the contract labor, as of now. In the IT sector, they could not make their presence felt. So when things are going out of their hands, they want to represent the workforce. Today, the kind of scenario that is being emerged or emerging scenario, the government have started recognizing the different forms of workforce, the platform workers, the gig workers, the fixed term employment basis workers. Why? Because those are the order of life. Organization as a commercial entity, they are concerned about the delivery model, not the different forms. No, they are not concerned about the forms of employment. They are only looking for 4 things: delivery models, revenue generation model, top line and bottom line. So therefore, the efforts made by the legislators cannot be looked upon a draconian laws framed against the interest of the workforce. It is a balancing act. But yes, the point I'm trying to make that everybody has to be sensitive to the need of the workforce as well. And workforce will have to think about aligning themselves with the pace of time. Because unless you enhance your employability, you cannot claim job security anymore.
Actually, you see, as you have noticed, with this lockdown period, the central government has come forward in terms of the compliances. They are giving a lot of reliefs and relaxation. So, do you think that this relaxation will continue, or will come back to its original position in the days to come?
The government, they have already initiated lot of measures to reduce the compliance requirement, because earlier the kind of the forms we were required to fill in,
Right.
now those have been reduced drastically. Now it is going to reduce further. So the ease of doing business happens to be the sole objective to improve our position, and definitely need to take care of those basic issues. That is the basic premise, basically.
Right.
Because everything has been done online. You don't have to visit, the labor offices. Labor code has been dismantled.
Correct.
Anybody, whoever has been restrained, he used to go to labor court and used to get a judgment. And in the process, he used to get covered under the section 17B. And what does it mean? That either you employ him, or even if you challenge the decision, keep paying him based on his last pay. And the case will continue for 20 years,
Yeah.
up to Supreme Court. And 20 years, whatever you've paid, even if you win the case, the money gone.
No, in that case, the compliance which is there right now, will it?
It will be much more simplified, sir. It will be much more simplified, sir.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm a non-HR person, so I don't think I can ask questions. I'm seeking clarifications for my own knowledge. Yes.
Sir.
So first is, I went through the act and I was reading up it there, and I was wanting to know what is unorganized. I mean, this definition is whatever is not organized is unorganized. Now that's kind of a circular definition. What do you mean by unorganized sector?
Yeah.
I mean, what does it show?
So agriculture laborers, there are unorganized sector and unorganized labor. But for example, an organization like GAIL, a petrochemical plant, you have lot many outsourced workforce. They are unorganized labor of the organized sector.
Yeah, the thing is that the Indian economy is dependent on only 10% being organized and 90% is unorganized, correct? Even in agriculture, people are now getting into contract farming, they're getting into farmer producer groups, and there are all those, let's say, unorganized kind of structures arising. Now, when will that get organized? Because if India has to show a very fixed kind of a very scientific GDP, then it has to be when the unorganized gets organized. Then everybody's, you can really see a very nice way of how people are progressing, technology is coming in, or whose income is what, and taxes are organized, all of that. When will that happen? I mean, I thought maybe...
Sir, I respect your, wishful thinking. And that's why at the initial remark I said that these labor law reforms, I don't term them a big ticket reform. I say that it's a baby taking a big steps to roll out the scheme of things, and it has only very limited way addressed the issues pertaining to unorganized labor of the organized sector. But yes, your it's a dream, to also to think about the unorganized level of the organized sector, and that requires a lot of deliberations and very difficult. I tell you, the particular segment, that agriculture is a particular segment. Nobody intends to touch upon those issues. Basically, it's a political issue. So very difficult, sir. But I tell you, the things have started rolling out now. Let's see how does it work.
Okay.
Before you move into the next big step.
Now, when it comes to disability, thank you for that clarification. When it comes to disability, I mean, you're talking of a benefit giving for disability for a person who may be on the job and then has suffered some kind of an accident due to which a disability occurs.
Yes, sir. It is meant for industrial worker. Yes, sir. You are correct. During the course of employment, or there are two definitions. In fact, there are different legal framework associated with it. Number one is in course of employment, and is arising out of employment. But point remains that anybody who is employed, he meets with an accident and becomes temporarily disabled or becomes permanently disabled, he will get that compensation.
If a person has a disability and
Yes.
he is employed by a company,
Yes.
then will he get the disability benefit?
No. Anybody, because the physically challenged people are also employed by the organization.
Correct.
As per the provisions of the, we call it presidential directives for the government sectors. So they draw the salary as good, as high as the permanent employees, as his colleagues. So there is no question of granting additional compensations.
Okay. My third thing is on, I saw the act, there was there's a mention of women and very elaborate definitions of how you have a definition for women, etc. But there's nothing, when we talk of diversity and inclusion, nowadays people are talking about LGBTQs and all that other things.
Yes.
Where does that lie in this act? I didn't see any mention of it, but how is it classified, if at all?
No, in fact, sir, these are the issues that require more and more deliberations, basically. When the Supreme Court itself could not settle the many issues, sir. The point you are trying to make, transgender and other things. So there are issues, sir. But yes, when you look at the women folk, the employees, we need to really extend certain benefits, because you must understand that women employees, they have a much bigger role to play to make the society livable for others. And therefore, this contribution or investment has to go from the organization. And that is not being realized by the private sector.
Okay, my last question is on definition of a robot. Is it a robot a worker or not?
Sir, in fact, a robot is not a worker, definitely, but you make an investment. So that is being accounted for. That is being accounted. So today, people have realized that, many of the routine perennial activities, which can be replaced by the, machine learning or, AI or something like, arrangement. And we have started also in many of our, the activities in our organization, the accounting activities or, creation of MIAs or something like that. So it depends upon the command only, and everything is being taken care of. Earlier, we used to have large number of employees involved in, carrying out those exercises. Now those are not required. So in fact, it is something like, when you started with your computerization, there had been, many, challenges, and resistance to change happens to be a very, very strong syndrome in Indian mindset. So when
I'm talking about robot on the shop floor, basically.
Robot on the shop floor, it is likely to be the order of life, sir, over passage of time. But there is a story, in fact, I don't have much time, but in Japan, what has happened, that in one hotel they have replaced 90% of their, workforce by, institutionalizing the robot concept. And after, say, 3 months, they could realize that, it cannot be done in that format. The hospitality industry requires personal contact and something like that. So they got it reduced from 90% to 50%. The point I'm to make that, it is going through the churning now. So, and ultimately it will get stabilized.
Okay.
So it's a transitional phase, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, sir, we have one more question coming from Mr. Mahesh again from Mumbai. He's got a question saying in regards to the retrenchment, do you think it will be way too flexible or easier for employers? As also appears from the response of some state governments scrapping some of the acts, if not mistaken. So here is the question.
Mr. Mahesh, I'm sure that you are quite knowledgeable and you're raising those issues. In fact, you know that under the Industrial Disputes Act, under Chapter 5A and Chapter 5B, and that happens to be bone of contention with this amendment. When earlier, any organization employing more than 100 persons were required to seek permission from the statutory authority, from the, the labor authorities before retrenchment. Now that has now been enhanced to 300. So now the trade union, they feel that this particular amendment has empowered, without any checks and balances, the management to hire and fire people at free will. Yes, that's why I said, it is the debate between the job security versus social security. When the organization is required to comply with the various provisions of the social security legislation, even with reference to the fixed term employment worker, or the platform worker, or the gig worker, but yes, there is no job security for them. And for the tenure employment, if somebody is employed for 3 months, 3 months, that's all. The point remains that the various contentions or agitations made by the trade unions, that most of the organization now will convert the permanent workforce into a fixed term employment basis. The statute as its preamble made it very clear that no, the present permanent employees cannot get converted into employees on fixed term employment basis. So those are the the kind of doubts got already addressed in this amendment itself.
So we had quite a few numbers of people who were sort of outsourced to an agency, and by virtue of the GST cost, which makes the cost almost 30% more with service charge and GST and other things. And we are actually genuinely debating that if we were to absorb all those people onto our own roles as fixed-term employees, is this a good idea or no? I mean, sorry if I've taken too much of the airtime and bandwidth, but these are very genuine questions I am facing, and I thought it was a very good forum to ask.
You have raised the question and answered as well. It depends upon the wisdom of the management, whether they would like to treat them as the outsourced worker or would like to bring them into the fold of the organization itself as a particular employee. That depends. But the kind of flexibility you enjoy to retain as an outsourced employee, you can't enjoy that kind of flexibility when you just get them absorbed and regularize them. But there are cases where in our organization, when few of the contract employees got selected as a permanent employee, and they are doing extremely well. So, it is a question of, how do you treat them and how do you, handle them. So I just can't have, ready-made answer for this.
Sure, sir. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir, and really appreciate your time. So I hope, Mahesh, we've answered, Mitraji has answered all your questions, right?
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
So I will now pass it over to Atulji for summarizing the great learning experience that we had for today. Thank you so much, Mitraji. It was wonderful being a part of this session.
Dr. Mitra, it was an education for me. Your passionate speech, I mean, talk, it was like so moving. I could get every concept that you floated in this, and I was coming from ground zero. So when I had looked up the act itself, I couldn't go beyond a page or two, but here you have literally put it all out for everybody. So I would kind of sum up what all provisions and how many codes, etc. But what I could get out of this was, look, it is some kind of a transformational change that is happening in the COVID world, and the workforce has to align with changes at the workplace and work itself. And that's a pretty difficult area to be in, where the management is looking to work with less workforce, and management is looking in short term. So all this is leading to one fact, that the HR has to become more proactive than as reactive or been accused to be reactive in the past. I think that is a very big learning, very big takeaway from here, because there are a number of things where people do the jugglery of, like, as you mentioned last time in your talk, that allowances were nearly more than 50% of the basic wage, and now they cannot be so. So there is a lot of structuring to be required of wages, etc. And I think HR can play a big role. Trade unions are feeling a bit threatened about losing their importance and role. That's where, again, HR will come in as a nice bridge between the management and the workforce and the trade union itself. So I think this has been the major learning for me on how this whole thing is going to pan out. And what I just thought would sum up what you have said and what you have expressed as a view is that the implementation is going to be an art. I think that really sums it up. The act has been laid out. It's a wonderful amalgamation of all the previous outdated, or let's say very old kind of acts. But I think these one single line that can sum it up as implementation is going to be an art, and we will be able to kind of maybe talk about it maybe a year down the road, and we can call you in for another session and see whether the implementation did go as an art, or was it or did we mess it up. So thank you very much for being on this session, and it was an absolute pleasure to host you here, and we do hope that these things come the way that you have explained to us, and we will see you later in sometime, maybe in a year down the road, and then again talk about this session again.
We would like to have Arijit ji for giving the vote of thanks to Dr. Mitra ji. Please, over to you.
Well, Sheetal ji, thank you very much, but I find very little to offer. I think everything has been covered, well covered, and superbly covered. Anyway, I mean, I just like to point out that in spite of the saying that without IR, there couldn't be HR. The new generation of HR professionals do not want to get their hands dirty. The younger group often try to bypass the nuances of various labor laws and acts, including compliances, but attempt to handle the HR function of the organization. I dare say, perhaps it is due to the dryness of the subject. Dr. Mitra, with his hands-on experience and lucid style, has very rightly emphasized the need. Passionate deliberation, indeed, has given a fillip to rip off the hardness of the shell to make it simple and to the audience. I'm sure participants must have enjoyed, and their evening is made, in spite of their busy scheduled social engagements due to the great Durga Puja festival in Calcutta. Dr. Mitra, it was a great pleasure to have you here HR 8 PM platform,
Thank you,
which
sir.
you have handled with Ellen.
Thank you, sir. Happy Sarodia to everyone. Happy Navratri.
And it is a small way of saying thank you to you, wishing you a very, very happy pujas in the days to come.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Happy
you.
Durga Puja.
Happy Durga Puja to everybody. Thank you so much.